All right, today we're gabbing with Taria Faison, host of the fantastic What Else Is Going On podcast about all things pop culture and Bravo. And I was blessed to be on her podcast last month, so I'm very excited to be returning the favor. Taria, Happy New Year. How are you?
Happy New Year. How are you? I'm so glad to be talking to you guys. First of all, to the audience listening, thank you for welcoming me. Gib and I now have a tradition.
Yes.
Whenever we record, I will be finishing up chicken flavored oodles and noodles.
And as I told you, this is what we get for recording on lunchtime. You know what I mean? Like it is what it is.
You
It
know,
is what it is.
I refuse. I used to like not be ashamed, but kind of not announce it. But yes, I ate oodles and noodles in college many moons ago, but I still like them.
Sometimes it's just cheap and easy, and that's what we need to do,
Yes,
you
and
know?
filling. It's so filling,
Yes,
you know.
a hundred
So
percent, 100%. So we were saying like we've gone from basically having nothing Bravo to talk about or just stuff off the shows to now we
yeah.
have, I think I'm watching 7 shows on Bravo currently, which is just it's again, it's I'm not gonna complain about too much of a good thing, but it's a lot.
I blamed Kempire and now you because I had to make sure I caught up on Roni to talk about it. But there was a part of me that was like, I mean, it's not the greatest, but it's also not the worst. Maybe because I starved maybe for content or
Maybe, yeah, maybe. Listen, sometimes it takes taking something away from us to really gain some perspective. You don't know what you've had until it's gone.
yes,
So
yes.
that's just that's just how it is. Um, so I wanted to start with Potomac because that's the first new episode that we got. That was on Sunday night. And to me, it's like I don't know how you feel, but I feel like this season started off on a pretty strong note. It was very promising. I was excited for where the show was going.
Yeah.
And it hasn't been bad by any means, but I do feel like in the past like 2 to 3 to maybe 4 episodes, it's lost some steam in my opinion. It feels like we're kind of just like chugging along on this Mia train, and it's sort of like there's nothing else, there's nothing much else to like kind of fill the air. So we're kind of leaning on the Mia stuff. How are you feeling about about Potomac this season at this juncture?
In the beginning, wasn't sure if I was going to watch because I had just went down this path, but I want to support the
Yeah.
girls. I'm like, I'm going to watch. And I said, okay, at the very minimum, I had a low bar. At least my butt won't be clenched every episode, feeling like we're going to talk about a
Yeah, sure.
phobiaism or anything, right? Or they're icing themselves out. So this season was like, oh, okay. We got a little bit of Stacey. We got a little bit of Ashley still doing whatever it is Ashley does, Giselle and Wendy, the whole,
Uh-huh.
probably talking to. But now it's like this Mia thing is it actually pisses me off and annoys me. And
Speak on it. Yeah.
I feel like, yes, we need to follow the reality, right? So for me, if and it's not for me to be the judge and juror, but if I felt like it was real, I would be invested. I don't feel like this story with Mia is real. Therefore, I feel like it's a waste of time. And I feel like she's pushing two different narratives on screen and off screen. And if I may jump ahead in this latest
Yeah.
episode, I feel like something clicked, which is why she posted the picture with Gordon, because she painted a picture of Gordon
Mm-hmm.
before the season or when the season first started about him being almost abusive and all. She had all this stuff online,
And unstable. Yep, exactly.
unstable on the show. He keeps having episodes, this, that, which I thought, well, if the episodes are that bad, I don't know how all of it works. So I want to be sensitive, but you're allowing your children then to always be around him. And then we have Karen telling her story about what happened with her ex and how she had to call the police. And I felt like it clicked. Like Mia was like, maybe I've taken this too far because you're painting a
Mm.
picture of Gordon, but now what we're seeing in time is not aligning with that. Your actions aren't aligning. So I think in that moment, something clicked. And in real time, we're seeing her try to correct it online by posting the new beginnings, the new pictures. And that's what pisses me off.
She's almost trying to distract now because she
Yes.
she knows sort of how far she took it when they were filming. That's
Right.
interesting. I think the biggest I mean, there's a lot of frustrating parts of it, but I think overarching, it's like it's just like a mismatch. Like we're being told one thing here, one thing there, and I think the one of the things that's concerning to me in terms of its effect on like the show and like is like it's not just that she's like you know, it's not just we're focusing on this paternity thing, which like is a little bit like icky and doesn't feel
Yeah.
great to watch. It's that like when you're not sure if somebody's telling the truth in such a big way, it threatens the sort of authenticity of the show overall, and it impacts the other women, and it impacts like the viewers' trust of the show, and like it's a
Yes.
slippery slope when this is the central story. This is storyline A for this season. It's
Yes.
Mia and Ink and G and what all the other women, how they're weighing in on it, because Karen has not been playing ball with the DUI stuff. It's become the Mia thing, and it's just at first it was sort of like, okay, there's nothing else going on to sort of like take some of the airtime out, but this is, I feel like it's like all we talk about right now when it comes to Potomac.
It's all we talk about, which also makes me concerned for the show because it also highlights the lack of what the other women have going on. Unless production isn't showing it,
Yeah.
unless
Yeah.
they're
So,
cutting it to me, you know.
right. Well, I mean, there's the whole rumor that like Mia also said more about Giselle's daughters
Ooh,
that is not, it, oh, and like that, I guess that's also sort of because I'm trying to understand why the other women, they're sort of taking it to Mia, but they're also not like going fully in on it. You know what I
yes,
mean? And I'm wondering if that's because like there are some things that we have not seen, like potentially what she called Giselle's daughters, and that's been cut out, and or allegedly that's what happened. And so Giselle, if that's true, like understandably so, is having her at arm's length if that's what
yes,
she's talking about her daughters. But I also think it's kind of possible that it's also an overcorrection from where the show had gotten to, because I think there's a little bit of a fear of like of getting into sort of arguments or being too at odds with one another because they're scared of it weighing down the show again. You know what I'm saying?
right, right. You know, they of what's happened in the past,
Yeah.
and they probably got a conversation, and then you see what happens with your, you know, like with other
Yeah.
franchises.
They're in their head almost.
Yes, and I think give what did it for me was like, even though it's alleged, what really made me believe, well, part of me was like, did Giselle leak that to the Jasmine brand? Because I
Oh,
like Giselle is getting her get back off the show because Giselle has been interviewing like never before.
and
And
she's been very hard lined with how she talks about
yes,
Mia.
like
Yeah.
she's not playing. But when Dr. Wendy said I would have cleared the table, I was like, her saying that to me, like, yeah, yes, Mia bringing up Giselle's daughter, saying they were sneaking boys through is one thing. And yes, if it was me and about my children, I definitely would have gone there with her. But when Dr. Wendy saying clear the table to me, you know that meme with Ayanla, I'm going to clean the table off. I'm going to
Yeah.
clean the table off.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
That's what brings to mind when you talk about clean the
Yeah.
table, which to elicit that reaction makes me think
There's something we
it was
didn't see.
said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. And like, yeah, I don't think that comes out of nowhere. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
don't think that that's um so yeah. And then there was this whole, you did a whole episode on the Essence article that was written. There was an opinion piece about how this whole thing with Mia is not entertaining.
Yeah.
Can you give me sort of just like a TLDR on your thoughts on that article and and how what you thought about it?
There was a part of me again that felt like if we're following like because you know we don't know 100% for sure, but we've been watching Housewives long enough to know when something is being pushed as a storyline and if they're authentic or not. We've been
Sure.
watching long enough to
Yeah.
know. So there was a part of me that was like, I would, even as icky as it is, I would be on board as I'm reading this article if it was authentic. But as the writer broke down every single thing, like when you see it highlighted from this to she said this to she said
Right.
this to she saying this, but her actions are different. I was like, I agree with her. And there was a part of me that was like, well, are we being too harsh? I don't think we are because I feel like as a viewer, you're playing with our emotions and all of this. So
Mm-hmm.
I did agree with a lot of what the writer said, what her opinion was. And again, it highlights to me that Potomac might be in a little bit of trouble.
Yeah.
This is what we're going because I refuse to believe the producers weren't even like,
Mm.
but they felt like, you
I
know,
mean,
the
yeah,
show.
it's just sort of like it's become sort of like this Mia and Jacqueline show,
Yes.
and I sense from a lot of viewers and just the conversation that like people just like aren't into that. Like we've gone a lot into this direction, and like even the women like there was this scene when they're in Panama and they're like sitting I think at a store or something, and Jacqueline's like telling some story, and they're all just sort of sitting there like, all right, when is she gonna finish talking about this? And Wendy's like, I'm glad we learned more about you. Now let's go.
And you saw on Jacqueline's face where she clearly felt so stupid. It's crazy because we know one thing about Potomac. Even last season when they weren't speaking, what is the one subject that bonds these women? Sex.
Facts. Uh-huh.
And even Mia and Jacqueline's story. And in the article, they talk about Jacqueline being Mia's spokesperson. Candace said it seasons ago, is this your spokesperson? And we see Mia in the confessional saying, oh, I wish Jacqueline would zip it. But we're watching you sit there in smugness as Jacqueline is telling these stories about you. Again, with one thing the Essence article said was, we're seeing Mia tell us a story, but her actions don't align with her story. And I think about even on Carlos King's podcast, Carlos asked her, have you, Ink, and Jacqueline done anything? She says, first she's like, oh, it was so long ago, I can't remember. And then she's like, no, Ink doesn't play about me. So he would never. We did take a shower together to save time. On the show, we see her say, we took a shower together, but I think there was foreplay between the two. So to me, that's when I really was like, you sat on a huge platform,
Yeah.
said nothing happened. Now we're filming the show and you believe foreplay took place
It's
when
all
your friend's
convenient.
telling you nothing happened.
Yeah. It's all very convenient, and like sometimes I feel like sometimes I'll watch them enter a scene. And actually, I felt this when Jacqueline showed up to Karen's house unannounced. It almost felt like Mia had like they had come up with that plan together. She had coached her, and like this is what you should say when you walk in. And like it just felt like that is not something that Jacqueline would have come up with on her own. And Mia like pretended that it's like it's just like it's just inauthentic. It's just and that is the worst thing you can be on a show like this. Sometimes it's just
Have you noticed
uh
this? Because another thing that the article highlighted, and then I went back and thought about the season, she said Mia is bringing this story to the girls unprompted, almost like she's saying, let me tell you about what happened on this episode of this Netflix show I watched. And when I thought about how she did it at Wendy's party, she tried to do it at the beginning of Wendy's party when Kiarna and Greg entered, but Karen changed the subject. She was like, so let me tell you
mm,
what's going on with me and Ink. Subject changed. Then she brought it up again. Then when they were at the GNA event, she brought, girls, I'm so glad you're here. And I was like, the writer is right. It's the girls haven't asked. And also, I have to say this because it just annoyed me.
do it.
Her and the social media thing, they're not uh policing or trying to get you caught up on social media. If me and you, Gib, are having a conversation and you say, oh my God, Taria, I'm dating this person, I'm so in love, we're having the time of our lives. Then if you go and post something totally different saying I'm single, I'm ready to mingle, relationships aren't for me, I am allowed to say, well, wait a minute, I'm not
Yeah,
policing.
a
That's not
hundred
what you
percent.
told me.
100%. No,
So like,
it's yeah. It's one of those things where I'm like sort of I never like to say like, oh, they should fire somebody, but like there has to be a huge course correct here because it's like we can't keep following this thread that's like it's just it's not a real thread. It's just not. It's
it's
just
not connecting, it's
yeah, it's not.
unraveling.
Yeah, exactly. It's last thing about Potomac before we move on is obviously over the break, all the footage came out of Karen on the day that she was arrested. And today, as we're speaking, the reunion is filming. And I have not seen whether or not Karen is there or not yet. I think we'll find out. I think they're gonna post something I think something's gonna be posted today to like tell us
Yeah. Yeah.
like because I bet we'll see the reunion seating. But what do you I'm gonna check while you answer this question actually, just in case.
Okay.
What do you want to see from Karen if she shows up to the reunion now that I mean, the picture that she's been painting about the DUI is very different from the reality that we saw in that footage.
I want, number one, I want her to stop. I don't want to use the word weaponizing, but throughout this season, she's made it so if you're not on my side or agreeing with
Hmm.
me, you don't support me. I want that to stop because I do feel like there was a point where the ladies were trying to support her. So I want her to come in a bit more humble. And I want her to say, because now we've seen it, I am ashamed of my actions that night. I know the damage that I caused and the damage that I could have caused, and take it off of her. Not thank God I'm alive. No, because at this point, no, thank God you didn't take someone else out. So I want her to come in not on the defense, on the offense. You can't use the excuse it's a criminal matter now, because guess what? It's over. So I want her to come in acknowledging what she did. She don't even have to get into specifics. Acknowledging what she did was wrong. The fact that it could have had catastrophic consequences. And honestly, thank the ladies for their support, because they were trying at one point. Yes, we know Jacqueline, the little digs and things, which
Right.
Karen would have done too if the shoe was on the other foot.
Of
But
course.
that's what I want. I want her to acknowledge what she did, acknowledge it could have been catastrophic, thank the ladies for their support, and then not try to defend her actions. I don't want to hear it was about my mom, it was about my dad, it was about my farm, it was about my family owning a plantation. I'm tired of being Thomas's concubine. I don't want to hear any of that.
Not that.
I
No,
don't,
I'm with you though.
that's it.
It's because the other women, the charge is gonna be led by Mia and
Ooh,
Jacqueline. And I think you're right. Instead of being defensive, instead of having her armor up, which is what, Karen's had this armor facade, whatever you want to call it, up for most of the time we've known her on this show. And that's kind of partially like what I've loved about her, is sort of this like slightly delulu, slightly
yes,
like, you know what I mean? And like that just it's been fun over the years until the situation where it doesn't it loses its charm,
yes,
and I think about some of the other women that we've seen across housewife shows, like kind of be at their lowest, right? Like they show vulnerability, the best in the best moments and the most rewarding and kind of the authentic moments. It's like they show us true vulnerability. They really let us in their emotions,
yes,
and that's really difficult. I'm sure. I don't know what that's like, but like I think we need to see that from Karen.
yes,
And I think that like that will right now there's kind of this like frustration and a little bit of resentment towards her right now from even from people who really love her. Like it's just
yes,
sort of like we were sold a different story. And I think for her to win some of that back, some of that potentially cultivate a little bit of goodwill for herself, which is a really important on these shows, as we know, to sort of have people in your corner. Take all the armor off, like be
yes.
vulnerable with us on this reunion and like really own it and really show, some like apologize for your actions and apologize for kind of misleading us. I think not just her cast, but also the viewership,
Yes.
you
Yeah,
know?
I will be vindicated. What?
Yeah.
Did you hear? I heard the clip of Robin and Giselle talking about
I
it
heard
on the
that on
podcast.
Reasonably Shady. Yeah,
I
and they kind of went in, especially
yeah,
Robin.
yeah. And because Robin's been right, I think about all the times that all the ladies have said, Karen calls me drunk, she cusses me out, and they've said it since the beginning. And
Right.
I think about Robin saying, it'll come out, people will see the real Karen. And what did they say? A drunk mouth speaks a sober mind. So a lot of the things that she was saying, Karen thinks very highly
Yeah.
herself.
And we've
And
known that.
yeah,
That's never been a secret. Um, but yeah, I want to see all that from her. I'm curious if they will like put the footage in the reunion. Like
that's
it's
what yes.
yeah, I mean
I can see
there's
Andy with his card saying, and now, and he crosses his head.
right, right.
I want to
And
shift gears.
and the last thing I'll say is like, if she does what we want her to do, right? If she shows us that version of herself, and it does set herself up for another season where the only way to go is up in terms
Yes.
of she's gonna have to rebuild a
Yeah.
lot in a lot of different ways. And I said this on my last episode, but like there's nothing that Bravo viewers love more than a comeback story, than rooting for the underdog. Then so I think right now a lot of people are frustrated with her, and she's a big choice to make right now, today, as we're speaking,
Yeah.
honestly. And if she makes the wrong choice, I think it's going to be difficult for her to win back goodwill in the future.
Same.
Um, you know,
I want to ask you this. Do you feel like there's a possibility of real jail time? And if so, do you think Bravo would hold production for her?
it's a good question. I don't. It could be up to like a couple years, is what I think we've
Yeah.
seen floated. I mean, I'm not an expert in all that. I but like I think the idea that it's not her first offense of
Yes.
this of this ilk is probably does not help her case. I mean, I hope she doesn't have to do jail time, but it's
Hard.
like,
It's
I
like
don't know. I don't know. And do they hold production? Like, I don't,
like they did with Teresa.
I
Can you
know. I don't, that's such a, I can't even like imagine what that's like, you know?
right?
Because I don't think that Karen, like to me, Karen is obviously Potomac. She's inextricably linked to the show, but she like isn't the show.
She
You know
isn't
what I
the
mean? Like
central. Yeah.
this is an ensemble show that has three remaining OGs, and she's one of them.
Yes.
She's so it's I don't know. I don't know.
It would definitely be. I was thinking about that, like, oh my gosh, like what would happen? Karen really messed up by not even though her case was open, she could have even come in going to AA meetings to show something
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
show, but
Yeah. I think she was holding, and I don't know. I don't know if she was getting the wrong legal
yeah.
advice or whatever, but she was holding on to some false hope, clearly, because that footage was never going to go over, was never going to win her that case. All right,
Can
so
you just
let's,
say one
yeah,
last thing?
yeah.
That I was a sobriety. I said, oh my God, the foreshadowing, which
Oh
that
no.
when it was just like such a clear shot, like I just don't drink around them. Who says I'm a sobriety? I was like, oh God, Karen.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a bit of a self-own there.
Yeah.
All right, Taria, let's pop over to Beverly Hills on the West Coast. Um, it continues to kind of be the Dorit and Kyle show for the most part. And right now I'm still invested in it, but I'm getting this sort of like inching up worry that there's not much else going on. And I think we might tire of this central conflict in the coming weeks. Right now, the issue that we're talking about is Kyle. She's still corresponding with PK. He still sends her memes. Um, and Dorit, clearly somebody tipped Dorit off that this was
Yeah.
happening. Um, but she asked Kyle about it. Kyle was very hesitant in the moment she kind of
Hmm.
paused for like 3 to 5 seconds. And
He
she was
did.
like, okay, how do I answer this? You could see the wheel spinning.
Yep.
She cops to it. Um, and obviously I think the consensus seems to be that like even though probably the messages in nature are very innocent and whatever, ultimately, one, she should have told Dorit about this, and two, she shouldn't have been corresponding with him in general because that's just sort of it's a bad friend move, and the optics are very bad.
Yes.
Get me up to date on your thoughts with Dorit and Kyle.
I was just I said I think Kyle, because I do feel like sometimes Kyle is producing, right? I feel like when she told Garcelle on camera in the moment, she was producing a little bit, thinking maybe it would make a little bit of a wave, not anticipating that half her cast would agree with Dorit, or well, actually the whole table when they were at dinner were like,
Yeah,
Garcelle was like, "Would you be texting? Would you be texting?" And they're all like, "No, never." Even Sutton was like, "No." So I feel like she realized, like, oh, snap, like, what did I say? Because I think if she anticipated the cast not being on her side with that, she would not have told Garcelle that. So I think it was
right,
intentional. She told Garcelle. So of course, we know, I mean, I'm 99.9% sure. Of course, we know nothing inappropriate, but at the same time, just the thought of it, you're supposed to be my friend, even though we're going through something, you're supposed to be my friend. And quite honestly, if you know PK, then you know what I could be dealing with him possibly. So for you to just, oh, we're just sending memes and this and that. I don't know. I feel like I wouldn't be doing it. I'll never forget, even as grown as I am, my friend broke up with her man that I considered a brother. Oh, bro, let's hang out. Unfollow, unfollow,
yeah. No, you
follow.
can't. Yeah,
I was done. Now she's followed him back, and I'm like, girl, now I can't even follow him back because I don't know the next time y'all are gonna. So
yeah. They're on the hamster wheel. Okay.
yes, but it's like that's just not that's my girl.
Yeah, yeah.
She
And
so
it's like obviously like, when they were both with their husbands, it was like a fearsome foursome. They hung out all the
yes,
time. Mauricio and PK, very good friends. But Kyle and Mauricio are separated as well, you know? So
yes,
it's sort of like she doesn't have that excuse of like, oh, Mauricio brings him around or whatever. I guess now that I'm thinking about it, PK is on this new sobriety journey at the time. Kyle's obviously been sober for like over a year, so maybe they have that to talk about. But
that's a good point.
again, she has not brought that up. It's not an excuse to be corresponding with him. And I think that we saw at the beginning of the season where like Kyle has this sort of I think that she has been sort of hesitant with how to address the Dorit situation with
Mm.
Dorit, so she avoids it. And it's sort of like she needs to learn, no, like that didn't work for you at the beginning of the season in terms of addressing your guys' issues. It makes it fester. So she avoided telling Dorit about this PK thing until she was confronted, which was not the right move. She should have been up, she should have bucked up and told her about it, you
Yeah.
know? And again, I don't think it's like malicious by any means. I just like Kyle's like lacking this awareness about how things are
Awareness.
coming across and how what the optics really are like for Dorit and the rest of the group when it comes to how she's acting right now.
Even think back to the it wasn't with Camille, but it was the first when they went away with Kathy and at
Yeah.
dinner. And people were like, Sutton was like, well, yeah, I've been iced out too. It took for more than Dorit to say it for Kyle to be like, oh, I'm sorry
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think a couple episodes ago they wanted us to believe that like, oh, they were getting back on a better
Yeah.
path. Like you knew that it was too soon for that to be happening. Um and yeah, I don't know. I want to get your thoughts also on Bose because I feel like there are a lot of different opinions on honestly her friendship with Dorit.
Yeah.
And I think some people view it as like Dorit's latching on to the new woman, and it could have been anybody because everyone else has this sort of history with Dorit, and they know how she
Yes.
is, and they know what the backstory is with her and PK, and so it's like any new blood would have just, and if an established cast member is latching on to you as a new person, you take that bait because you need to have some inroads with the group. So I understand why Bose has, jumped into that
Right.
pool with her. Some people view it as like a racial thing because Dorit's been accused of things in the past, and here's this new powerful Black woman in the group, and so it's kind of like a dual thing, I think, for some in some people's minds.
Mhm.
And I think, which I think there's weight in maybe a lot of that, but I also think that sometimes that argument negates Bose's
That's what
agency and whatever in the situation of like being able to choose her friends. You know what I mean? Like if Bose saw some red flags with Dorit or whatever, she doesn't need to give her the time of day, but she does. She clearly likes Dorit. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that friendship?
I think coming in, we've known Bose to be, or we've read about Bose as this powerful businesswoman. So she's
Yeah.
been around personalities. She can read situations, right? So she's coming in and we're watching her assess the situation. She's also coming in not saying, I'm friends with this person. She's getting to know, and she happens to vibe with Dorit. We know that it's superficial. Like it could be, not saying that it doesn't matter, but it's superficial when you're first getting to know someone.
Of
Dorit did
course.
deep with her, and Bose kind of went a little bit deep with her in terms of her marriage, but it still wasn't like, oh, we're bonded for life. I think that Bose is enjoying this Dorit. Look at some viewers. You haven't enjoyed Dorit. Now you're seeing this Dorit and you're
Exactly.
enjoying it. Bose is experiencing it in real life. So she's like, I'm going to enjoy
It's
this
a good
Dorit.
point.
To say that well, not say, but we have to remember again, Bose is a smart woman. So she's not letting her, I don't think she's blinded by Dorit to any faults. Or, I mean, she even said in the last episode, Dorit does talk a lot and she
Yeah.
likes to give you all the details, but I want all the details. So I think that we need to, because I've seen that conversation about Bose too. Now, I
Mhm.
will say in the after show, Bose is very like Dorit, like pro, like throwing out little things about the other cat. So that I could see that making somebody go, now wait, but we also have to remember that's after
The whole
months
season.
of
Yeah.
filming. Yeah, so
Yeah.
that could be a thing. But I think that Bose is smart enough to, she's not jumping blind in with Dorit. I think she's enjoying Dorit.
Yeah, and I also think that it's not like she's burning her bridges with everybody else. You know what I
Yes.
mean? And she knew Garcelle before. Like, it's not like if she didn't like Dorit, she could have just like jumped on the Garcelle and Sutton train if she wanted to. But she's kept that in good standing, but she's really kind of going more on this Dorit side of things. And you're right, like Dorit has a new energy this season that is clearly drawing people in. And
Yeah.
so why would it draw Bose in? And I
Bose
also
in.
think, and also Bose is, yeah, she's there for Dorit to, be a shoulder to cry on and sort of a sounding board, but Bose is also doing a little bit of bone collecting, and she
Ain't she
she she
though?
But when Bose was at Dorit's house and they were having that conversation before the Erica's event, Bose planted that seed about, is Kyle talking to PK?
Yes.
And she got her riled up kind of. And
Which
that was important to do.
it was that planted the seed. And then Erica, when they flash back to Erica saying, does it just made me, does Kyle talk to PK? And
Yeah.
Dorit's kind of like, but Bo, so I'm like, how did Bose know?
Yeah, that
And I,
information got around. That information got
yeah,
around, and
yeah,
I think Dorit was primed, and somehow it avoided. Somehow the questions avoided Kyle until the group
until the
scene.
and
But
I love how Bose checked Sutton. I will be honest, I have never
oh
been a Sutton girl. I just feel like she's very entitled to her feelings and no one else's. And every time someone says something to her, it's that's not nice, that's mean. It's always about her. I was like clenched, waiting to see how this was going to go with her and Bose. And I think Bose handled it perfectly because she didn't back down, but she also was kind of like, because when Sutton threw out the whole "don't use it as a weapon," her bracelet, I was like,
oh,
Rose
that
said
was
in her
clunky.
confessional,
That was
yeah,
clunky. Yes, the I don't know about you, but the Sutton's getting is latching on to Bose using the word weaponize. She's
yes,
when Bose said, Sutton, you're weaponizing Dorit's situation against her. It reminds me a lot of when Sutton latched on to Crystal saying, I was violated a few
yep,
seasons ago. We're
yep,
latching on to words here, and there's different situations, but there are similarities in both these situations. Do they
yes.
remind you of each other as well?
Oh, absolutely. And that's what made me with Crystal, I was very much like, that's what turned me off from Sutton, that whole
Yeah.
situation, how she refused to take accountability. And really the cast backed Sutton. So now Sutton is coming in. I felt like thinking the same was going to happen with Bose. And I don't think that's going to happen with Bose.
No, because it's happening at the same time as Dorit and Erica calling out Sutton's ways of, I want sisterhood, and then stirring the pot 5 minutes later. And like,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that's what she does, and it's the show benefits from it. Sutton is a
Of
good
course.
pot stirrer,
Yeah.
and she is good at getting shit going. Like that's why she's been able to stick around for so long without sharing much of her own storyline.
Mhm.
And I'm grateful for her in that regard. But I'm glad that it's also being called out a little bit because it's kind of gone unchecked for a while.
For a while, I said, when she was yelling at that table with Dorit, I said, now, were they not lying? Like, is the Southern Belle full of Southern comfort? Because what's going on?
It's
Like,
not Southern
like,
comfort.
like, what is happening? When she was yelling, when I
Yeah,
tell you, it's the heat started at my feet, and I was like, calm
mm,
down, assess the situation correctly. Because as viewers, we have ones
of
that we're drawn
course.
to, but I was like, I was so glad that they were all calling it out because when Kyle tried to call it out last year, even last year, I know I wasn't Kyle's biggest fan either. However, when she was like, "You've already lost one sister, you don't want to lose another," like you said, this has gone
Oof.
unchecked. And I loved when Erica said, "Sisterhood, here we go." It's like
Uh-huh. I think Erica's having a great season. I'm
I was going to
enjoying
ask
her.
you. I was just going to say
I'm
where you
enjoying
at,
it. I think
Erica.
that
Me too.
I just think that she's talk about rebuilding. It's like we talked about Karen rebuilding. I think Erica's on the up and up in terms of that. And there's a little bit of a smoothing out of the past for sure. And
Yeah.
like, but sometimes that's sometimes unfortunately or fortunately for the housewives, that's how it works. We can't be
Yeah.
too hung up on something that's at this point has been happening since 3 seasons ago. We
Yeah.
gotta move forward, as we all know. And so Erica's doing a good job of image maintenance and rebuilding.
Yes.
And
I
you
like
know
that
what?
image maintenance. I
Yeah, I really
love
think that it's from that perspective, it's kind of impressive, to be
Mhm.
honest.
And I like her and Dorit
Me
because
too.
I think back to Dorit giving her the panties and all of that stuff. And I like her and Dorit together. And I love, even in the after show, Erica's not backing down when it comes to Kyle, like on how she feels about things with
Yeah.
Dorit. She's not just so I like I'm
Yeah.
enjoying Beverly Hills in a different way that I'm enjoying my favorite, which I know we'll get to.
Yeah, 100%. And last thing I'll say about Erica is that like I still think that I think ultimately her loyalty is to Kyle because I think that
Okay.
I think that they're closer as outside of the show friends, kind of,
Okay.
because I mean, like Erica has a podcast with Teddy now, like she's
Yes,
good friends with Teddy. I think that
that's
Dorit
true.
is not, obviously, and so I think that maybe they're closer in real life outside of the show. But I think that Erica's doing a good job of not letting that influence her too much in terms of like how she's quote unquote playing the middle in the show. You know what I mean?
That's true. Yeah, she's doing it in a way that doesn't seem messy.
Yes,
So
I
I
agree.
like that.
I
Yeah,
agree. All right, so I don't want to spend too much time on New York because I don't think that there's that much to discuss unless you feel differently. But I do think that this past episode, it was the second or third in Puerto Rico. I actually think it was maybe their best of the season. And obviously the bar is a little bit lower for New York right now,
I
or a
agree.
lot lower, but I was actually pretty entertained by this episode. We had a lot of different little conflicts going on. We had Bryn and Aaron talking shit about Jessel at the top about like her changing and being too image obsessed. We had Uba and Bryn's big conflict. We had Aaron taking issue with Uba bringing up cancer.
Mm,
It was all giving like real conflict that we could like understand and latch onto, which I think has been an
yes.
issue for this show, where it's like this sort of, I don't know, it's like, oh, this person texted me this and this person like said this and then repeated it the wrong way. Like now it's like more substantial
It's real.
drama,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, and it's working a little better.
Yeah, I agree too. I right off the bat, listeners, I will tell you, never been. I don't like to say I don't like, right? Because we don't know these people. So what I like to say is I've never seen it for. So I'll lead with
Okay,
that.
I like that. You've never seen it for New
I've
Roni.
never
Okay.
seen it for Bryn. There was
Oh, for
something about
Bryn. Okay.
yeah, that always turned me off. And in this episode, this is why I blame Gib, y'all, because I was like, my blood is boiling. I'm on fire because while Uber can get Uber hot,
Hmm.
you're poking the bear. And I think what we're seeing is Bryn in her mind trying to produce a show that she thinks is interesting. And we're seeing Uber's real reactions to, I'm just supposed to be on a show when they're filming me. So you're coming at me with this. These are her real reactions to Bryn's producing actions. And it's like, you can't continue to poke the bear and think the bear is not going to roar. When she said, Uba, what are you doing? I'm bored with you. It was like Uba wasn't even in the
Right.
conversation at dinner. And then they bring up Jessel. It was like, I do love the way uh they were all at breakfast the next morning, and Cy was talking to Jessel about how they were all talking about her. And when Bryn comes out, she's like, oh, I'm talking about you.
Yeah, me too.
The way she brought it in so non-combative, I was like, oh, I like this. And I do think maybe Jessel has had, I don't think the core of who she is has changed, but I do think the fans have made her feel good from season 1 to season 2. So there might have been a little bit, but I like how she was like, wait a minute, Bryn, that's not what I like. She didn't back down. And I liked how Sai said, because sometimes in conversations with different people, you may get caught up in the conversation. And she said, wait a minute, I like Jessel. Why am I talking about her? So I felt these were very real moments. And then last thing with Aaron, sometimes Aaron does give me like, oh, girl, enough. I
Right.
felt where she was coming from with Uba. I like that she understood that Uba didn't mean any harm while I'm still allowed to feel this way because I'm going
Yeah.
through.
100%. I agree with that. And I also think that, like what you said, Uba's having these real reactions. And I think that Aaron's reaction to Uba's real, just sort of like, it was an innocent thing to bring up, but she should have had more awareness in terms of bringing
Yeah.
that topic up. But I think it was an innocent mistake. And I think that they both acknowledged each other and how the
Yeah.
intention was there in a real way. And like, I think that that actually shows growth from like how they communicated on on last year's trip, which was
Yes.
like, they were both seeing red with one another. So I think that was like a good thing. And I agree about Jessel. I don't think that she's changed as a core person, but I do think that like she has shifted some things in
Yes.
reaction to how she was received in the first season. Um, which isn't a bad thing, but I hope that she's like keeps that a little bit. And I'm actually, it's maybe good that it was called out on her, even though the call out was like a little bit, the call out was like an overreaction. But I think that maybe that fact that it was called out will give her pause from making too many other changes and
That's a
being a
good
little bit more
point.
aware of that. You know what I mean?
That is a really, really, oh, that, yeah. Cause like, okay, because I think she can be like self-aware. So like, oh,
Yeah.
I wanna ask you this because there seems to be this thread of different people have said Bryn is trying to block real friendships from forming, right? They said it in this episode. And I think back to in the beginning of the season, it
Mhm.
was, well, let me flash forward because Bryn is in a confessional, and so was Aaron, saying they have this special bond. Bryn knows what she's going through. But in the beginning of the season, it was Uba that was at the wig shop with Aaron, with her mom. It was Uba that Aaron said she was close to. Uba's been checking in on her with all of the things that are happening with her mom. So I'm like, what is going on? Because in the beginning of the season, Uba and Aaron are saying they're extremely close. Again, we have Uba at the wig shop, not Bryn, with her mom looking for a wig. And now, flash forward, it's Aaron and Bryn saying they have a special relationship, and Bryn has been there for her. So I'm like, what piece? That's what's kind of frustrating with RHONY. Like, what are we missing? What brought y'all to this point where y'all are not as close anymore?
Totally. And like we hear that Uba and Aaron, like they talk or talked every day. And
Yeah.
I don't see like that much. I mean, other than I guess she went to the wig store with her at the beginning of the season, but you don't see that much evidence of how close they are. And so it's
Yeah.
like, again, we're back to sort of the misalignment of like what we know to be true versus what we're seeing on the show. I do believe that like I do believe that Aaron and Bryn feel close to me. Like even though
Yeah.
they kind of like bicker like sisters and they go back and forth. And I feel like maybe at the beginning of the season, Aaron and Bryn weren't in a great place. And they had that moment where Aaron came to Bryn's house and they sat on the couch and they
Oh,
sort
yeah.
of hashed it out. So maybe they got to a better point. And but it's also I think one of the issues for me with the show in general is like I can't keep track of all the little shifts and like who stand because I think it is just because the conflict is so nebulous and like I don't know. It's like and none of it's like really big or substantial. So it's like, okay, there's all these little shifts in friendships
Yes.
that happen, but like it's hard to put into words. Maybe it's because I know that like in 3 episodes it's going to be different or like whatever. Whereas like, and we'll get to it next. Is Salt Lake City. Like they have a lot of shifts in dynamic, but like they're there's a little bit more time between the shifts, I think, and like you have time to like soak in. Okay, Lisa and Whitney last season they became friends, and then it sort of started to fracture towards the end of last season. Now it's like a total fracture. Like we're there's more time to sort of marinate in the dynamic before it shifts again. Whereas on the new Roni, it's like, whoa, like who's playing
Who's
what game
doing
of
what?
phone and telephone and who's
Yes.
texting who and who's inviting who to who, and it's all off camera and it's like we get half the story and that's the issue with me. But I do think that as we said, like we're kind of getting to, at least in this season, we're getting to a point where the drama feels more lived in and more attain like a more you can grab it, you can understand it.
I will say I love Uba, who was some of the things when she was in that van doing her makeup. I
Mm,
said, Uba,
yeah,
come on, like, because you
yeah,
know what Brent is gonna like, you already know where that is going to go.
right. Well, it's also like, listen, her accusing Brain of sleeping with somebody to get on the show, that's obviously like an effed up thing to
Mhm.
say, but she had said it after, as you said, being poked a
Oh,
lot by Bryn.
yeah.
And so I think, she was, it's not surprising that she went there. And I think that she kind of
Yes.
should be given that leeway to kind of go there.
Oh, yes, I
But it's,
agree.
but it's interesting that like they didn't pull on that thread at all.
At
Like
all, they left it. I
they
wanted
left
more.
it. And I'm like, again, it's the same thing that I feel about the Scientology thing with Rebecca Minkoff. They just let it lie there. And it's like,
Mhm.
this is a really it's breaking the fourth wall and it's juicy and it's real. But if this is an accusation that Uba really thinks, why are we not following that? Why are we not hearing more about why she thinks that? Maybe
That's
again,
what,
maybe it gets too much behind the scenes, but I'm like, on Salt Lake City, you think they would have let that go? That
can
would have
you
been 5
imagine?
episodes. Okay. Like,
They would have turned around and talked to a producer. Have you heard about this?
yeah,
Like they would really
exactly. And then
got
we would have seen it. And and I feel like there was a conversation at some point that was like, let's not go there. Let's not follow this.
yeah.
And it's like, there's like guardrails almost. And it's just frustrating.
Yes, like Jersey walls that we keep running into because I wanted somebody to say, well, Uber, why would you say that? Where did you get that from?
Yes.
I agree with the whole poking of the bit. Like I have always said, and I have raised my kids with this, you can throw a pebble at somebody, but you cannot dictate their response. So if they throw a boulder back at you that knocks you out, you started it. You can't dictate someone's response. You don't know where a person is at in life, where they're coming from. I always think back to Monique from Charm School. Did you watch Charm School back?
Oh, I effing love Charm School.
Okay.
Yeah.
So remember, I forget her name, but I think it started with an S. The girls had to choose their beds. She chose her bed. She walked out of the room or something. Someone else said, "This is my bed now." And it became a physical fight. And we learned that that girl had grew up in foster care. So nothing
Mm-hmm.
was ever hers. So it triggered something in her. So
Safari.
yes,
Little Safari.
yes. So you can't dictate somebody's reaction. So the part in the van that I was kind of
Yeah.
like, before all that, when Uber was like, which how Bryn took it and twisted it, when Uber was like, they were like, turn the light off. Somebody's driving us, and she's like, the world could die. It was like Uber. And then what does Bryn do? Say to Sai, well, she doesn't care if you die. She said it in the van. And Sai's like, wait, what are you
What?
talking about? It was
Yeah.
like, so I'm like, Uber, you already know what Bryn's capable of. Like, it just annoyed
Yeah.
me that the producing, but I do like the even though it was a sad moment, so sad because we find out in real time Aaron's father passed, but
Yes.
Aaron's level of vulnerability and emotion that she displayed, and Brent showing up for her in that moment, I really enjoyed it all. And then it's going to be on Uba again next week, her talking about this lake.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And I'll give them credit. They've been teasing this end of season trip for a long time. And you know what? It's more or less delivering. And I think it's a red flag. They had to wait all season to give us something really great. But the trip is kind of delivering. And yeah, we'll see. We have a couple more episodes, I think. And yeah, Uba's gonna step in it with the the pigeon. I'm done with the pigeons, but I guess we're not done with the pigeons. So
Right. But can I ask you this? Do you remember when Jessel did the interview, and I think we may have talked about this when you came on, but she says the season ended early because people got
yeah.
physical. Is it going to be Uba and Bring, you think,
I
on the show?
think so. Yeah, I think it's Uba and Bern on the trip. Somebody alluded to an accusation, and it
Okay.
might be Uba accusing Bryn of something, if I'm remembering correctly. And so maybe, now that I think about it,
It's this.
maybe the sleeping together on the show comes back around.
That's what when you said that, it clicked, like maybe that's
Yeah, I
together.
actually bet that's what happens. I bet that comes back around because as we see in the footage they've shown us, like from that, there's a really tense moment where people are like running around the house and yelling, and
Yes.
I kind of bet that that comes back up, and it's breaking the fourth wall, and we see producers and cameras and stuff, and one of them apparently had to sleep in a hotel room, and then one of them got on a plane. So
That is, I thought, I don't know if I saw it or read it somewhere, but you know how Bryn shared her story earlier in the season about what happened to her with this guy, and she never, somebody was trying to tie that, like Uba saying that triggered Bryn. And I
mm,
cannot remember where I saw, of course, we see
okay, that
all
that
kinds of
could
things,
that could
but
be valid. That could be
that would make
definitely
sense.
valid.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I'm
very
like,
curious, very
so now
curious.
you're going to make me, now I'm going to have to be tuned in for the
I
rest
mean,
of.
yeah, now we're talking ourselves into it, which is what they want. Um, all right, Tria, we're ending with the best. Salt
Ah,
Lake City delivered yet another banger of an episode. I mean, they have been on such a run. It's actually wild. Like literally since like the Milwaukee trip, they have not delivered a filler episode at all. Everything's had something substantial, something great, whether it's like a big blow up in a group scene or a big like memeable
yes.
moment or a merry moment. Like it's just been amazing. Um, I mean, even just I think I posted this online, but it was like even just like the range they showed in this past episode, the the versatility alone. So, in one outing on a group trip, we go from sitting in a Sprinter van, which is just supposed to be getting to the excursion. We have a screaming match about Brittany and the recording, and well, it actually started with other topics, but we get into the whole thing. Brittany runs out crying. Then they just like put on happy faces and go on ATVs and go jumping off a waterfall. And then they get drunk together and have an emotional conversation about the shame of Mormonism around sex and sexuality. And then they go drunk shopping together. And then they come back from that trip. They search for listening devices in Meredith's room. They have this tense meal where they talk about things. And then we come back from the trip and Meredith has a spiral over what Heather. It's just like that was all in for them, that was all in 8 hours. And
And
it's just they're the
and
gift
it's
that keeps on giving.
believable. It's
Yes.
authentic stuff. Even if what's with Salt Lake City and even with Meredith, I don't think they're producing the feelings around these things,
Mm-mm.
like how these are real, even though they're little, these are real things. And I think what makes Salt Lake City for me is sort of like the Nene effect, where it's the throwaway comments that also
Yes.
you like Mary saying to when Brittany makes her announcement about her charity, Mary goes, "Girl."
Or when Meredith's going in on Brittany in the Sprinter van and Meredith goes, get her, Meredith.
Yes, yes. It's like those little side comments. It's like it almost ties the scene together in a way. Or when Angie, my Greek goddess, when she
The
says,
pillar of the community.
slide your phone to the left like you do, or swipe like you do Tinder.
Swipe left like you do on Tinder
And
and show us your photos.
and the
Uh-huh.
fact that Angie was the one that noticed her recording,
That
and
was
then
big. That was
it
actually
was,
big, I think. That was important for Angie. Uh-huh.
I think that's why she got that that center snowflake.
And I also think that it's kind of like, obviously last season, at the end of the season, they all solidified themselves as like the cast against Monica and they was
Yes,
bonded. But Angie has still always been sort of like the just like a slight level down in their eyes, I think, in terms of the
yes.
bond with them. And I think by her pointing out the recording, it puts her in that group. It's like you're portraying us as a
She's a
group.
part of it,
I'm
right?
speaking
Yes.
for the cast that exists, and we have trust issues, and you're betraying us. And for
It
her to be
does.
the spokesperson of that, and for them to all rally around her, is low key kind of important for her. And I loved it.
Oh, I did not even pick up on that. Is such a good, like, because like you said, she's always been almost like the
Yeah.
outlier.
Like the
Out.
latecomer who has been part of the group, but isn't fully there. But that's like,
Oh, that's
she
so good.
she gets why they would be mad, and she was just as mad.
Yeah,
And even also for Bronwyn to be right there with them mad, it also sort of creates there's already a lot of space between Brittany and Bronwyn in terms of their connection to the group,
right.
but even more. You know what I mean? She's like
Yes.
when Brittany was explaining how to use the phone and Bronwyn goes, okay, Steve Jobs.
So I'm saying I don't need a direction from you on how to use an
No,
iPhone.
it's
I'm
so
like,
good. It's
this
so
is
good.
so real. To me, okay, so I had a conversation before about when the women complain about being recorded on device on cell phones,
Yeah.
because there's a segment of people, viewers, who think, well, you're being recorded. For me, if we're all on a trip together and I see that there are cameras recording me, because this is before I saw the scene, we see cameras recording me, cameras are now down, to then find out that someone in the group is recording me would be like such a no. Unless it was like a Heather Dubrow when they were in Ireland, where she pulled out her cell phone and it
Mm,
made very well known. Now that I see this and see that they were in a recording setting, I still feel the same way, because for me, in my mind, as a person who um, does commentary on these shows, we sometimes interview these women. In my mind, the first thing I thought was, who should get ready to send that recording to outside
exactly.
of this?
Which blog is this going to?
Yes. So I was like, and then I started wondering, how did would Brittany's been such a good uh addition to me as a friend.
Hmm.
What did production think in that moment? Did they think, what are you doing? Can we now not trust you?
Hmm.
Like that. And then her story changed 3 times.
Oh, it changed a million times. Even the after show, she was like,
Oh, I got
I see Heather all the time, like, with her phone up, like filming. And it's like, yeah, but Heather had when people are taking like group videos of them, like at whatever event or on a trip, like, they're filming. She was secretly filming the back of a seat to capture the audio. I'm sorry. Like, I believe full-heartedly that she was recording video of them and it wasn't a mistake. And yeah, I think it was a mistake. And it wasn't like, I don't think it was as malicious as they think. Like, I don't think she was going to send it off, but I understand their trust issues. I understand. I mean, again, they had this person in their group last season who, was secretly running a fan account. And so it's like, I understand that built-in trust issue. And also, like, I do think there's this distinction between, you're filming a reality show and, even in these vans, it's sort of like, it's just like GoPro cameras in the
Yes.
corner of the van. So it's less like obvious that you're even in, I think in the moment, like obviously, you're filming a show, but
Yeah.
like it's less like overt, like, oh, here's a big camera in my face. It's more like we're traveling to the group excursion. And but they're even then they're consenting to be filmed by the production company that's going to be edited and put up to Bravo. Well, there's a whole process to that they've signed up for and allowing those cameras into their home. Having somebody amongst you secretly recording you unfiltered, no edits ever going to happen.
Right.
I understand that distinction. It's a consent thing. It's a
Yeah.
consent to be filmed thing. So,
That's a good point too. Yeah, I would be furious when Meredith.
oh my God, that angle of Meredith alone just literally was sending. They kept because everything else was normal, and then with her, it's like, you know,
The way like she's contorting her body. It was like her body was contorting the way her voice contorts sometimes to me, because
yes.
when she was trying, fast forward it, when her and Heather were talking in their almost matching outfits, and she's saying, I don't take a sleeping pill unless I'm traveling international. She could barely get that word out. And I was like,
That was a
Meredith,
great
what
little,
is,
yeah, I
yes,
loved
Meredith,
that.
what is going on? Everything from the beginning of the episode to the end. I did, and while looking at Brittany, understanding, I did not feel sorry for her when she got off that bus and was crying. However, there was a part of me that could identify, and I
Sure.
felt realness in the moment when she talked about, I've been carrying this, I'm
Hmm.
sleeping with him. This goes against, the beliefs, and the people are going to look at me different, which is interesting because a lot of times in religion, in Christianity, for me, I believe in God, but I also believe the way you show that is how you live your life, not the words that you speak. Like, of course, we're not perfect. Of course, I mess up every single day. But for me, Brittany was a representation, because that happens in Christianity too, of how I want you to see me. So
Mm,
she was more concerned about
the
how the
image.
were going to see her, as about how she felt like maybe she was betraying something that she believed in. But I love how Bronwyn also said, I get that, but you then can't shame somebody to hide your shame. And I feel what Bronwyn was saying about her daughter. I was in my second year of college, Penn State University, grew up in a Christian household. Boom, I'm having a baby.
Mm,
You feel the people looking at you like, but then, like Bronwyn said, you have to come to a point where this is my child. I'm going to love this child. Now, for me, grateful my family didn't turn on me. They were disappointed at first,
but
but
they
then,
supported you.
yeah, they supported me. So for me to watch the show and feel all those emotions, Brittany, I would have read you for Phil, told you off, to I can understand where she's coming from, but oh, Brittany, what are you really like? It was so many
Yeah.
different emotions, and I
Yeah. Well, I think
fun.
that speaks to how great the cast is. They're able to
Yeah.
go from this like insane moment where it's a gang up on everybody. And then Brittany very kind of transparently deflects in the moment. Like, there's one thing I haven't been
Ooh,
truthful about. She turned it around actually kind of skillfully.
yes.
I wouldn't say skillfully in that like it wasn't very subtle. It was very
You
obvious
noticed
that she
it.
was doing that.
Yes.
But like they all went with it, and like they all of a sudden it's this really emotional conversation where they can all hear her and understand her. And it's like it was very I don't know. It was that 20 minutes of the episode was very indicative and a really good kind of capsule of how good they are as a cast in terms of moving forward and not getting hung up on certain things. And yeah, I'm curious, speaking of Bronwyn though, I'm curious what you think
Ooh.
about her taking the conversation that they had after the boat ride where she, Heather, Whitney, and Angie are having lunch and they're talking about why Meredith and Lisa weren't as sympathetic to Bronwyn and they were sort of seeing Todd's side of the whole situation. And then Bronwyn bringing that conversation to Lisa behind their backs without telling them. What do you think of that?
There was a part of me that was like, well, maybe she felt like she participated in a conversation and
Yeah.
she wanted to get skewed. Except for me, she skewed the conversation. Even with Heather saying, hey, they have been accused of X, Y, and Z. Maybe that's why. To me, that wasn't talking bad about them. That was just her perspective. Angie definitely didn't say anything
Mm-mm.
about Lisa. Whitney said what she said. And I think Whitney is the type that she would say it to them, of course, clearly. So I looked at Bronwyn like, since the beginning of the show, the way she's come in has been basically, I'm a beacon of honesty. But your honesty is also, you going to Lisa, knowing Lisa, you had to know, if you said to someone, I had a conversation that wasn't favorable towards you, and you point out who you had it with, you had to know Lisa automatically is like, what did they say about me? So now you're creating a feeling in Lisa about these people that is could be false. So but you've owned your part. So now you can come off by saying, I'm always honest. I'm honest. Yes, I'm honest about what I say, but you've left this thing in the air between Lisa and Heather, who's supposed to be her friend, Whitney, who she's already having an issue with, and Angie, who has been riding.
Precarious grounds. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
I didn't like Bronwyn doing that. And to me, it's now I'm like, not is it a shtick, but it feels like it's under the guise of something else, this whole honesty thing.
Right. And also sort of around the holiday, I think in like last week or something, Bronwyn put all these text messages out between her and Lisa.
Yes.
And I think essentially the point to kind of boil it all down, the point that I took from her posting all of that amid her kind of caring for her sick parents and all this stuff is because Lisa was basically like kind of shading her on Twitter
Yes.
amid her dealing with really difficult things with her parents. I think that what she basically was saying was like, I spent almost all season basically sucking up to Lisa, wanting to maintain our friendship, not kind of having tunnel vision of like it being reciprocal. And I think that she, from a bird's eye view, now that they have finished filming, now that they have done all their shady interviews and seen the season back, I think that she's real in her mind, she thinks that Lisa has not been a good friend to her. And so it's sort of like she's admitting, I think, that in the moment during the season, she was kind of like sucking up to Lisa in a really big
Yes.
way. And I think that I'm guessing that this is a moment that probably at the reunion, I bet you she owns this more at the reunion because of
I hope
hindsight.
so.
That's what I kind of think.
I hope so. And y'all, Gib and I formed our relationship
Yeah.
around Oodles and Noodles and around Lisa Barlow. And because I had said something about Lisa being iconic. And of course, for those of you, if you listening, if you know me, um, when I'm interested in somebody coming on, I'll find a way. So I said, well, let's come on the podcast and
Yeah,
we
of course. Yeah,
can.
disagree.
So I was going to put this on Threads, but I wanted to wait to tell you that I will have to, like, in this episode, I understood Lisa's frustration and perspective with Bronwyn because I cannot imagine a group of people who are supposed to be my friends. Yes, I'm on the outs with one. One of my friends is now telling me she was already upset because I didn't receive what she told me. Well, now she's telling me she had a conversation about me amongst these group of people. Two of them are supposed to be my friends. And now we're on a bus dealing with someone recording me. We never got to the issue. I don't even know. Like, I planned this fun day, but what is the conversation that they all had about me? Because that would be like, I would have had to address that like front and center, only to get to the dinner and it come up again. And now I don't know who to believe because, well, Whitney, I feel like you have lied about me before. When in actuality, I don't think Whitney said anything wrong in the conversation. And yes, I've had issues with Angie. So I understood Lisa's frustration in this episode because I would have been like, and this is my trip.
Right. And it's frustrating because you really don't know what version of the story to believe. And it's just, yeah, it's so I'm curious how Lisa reacts to finding out what the conversation was. And I'm sure we'll see a lot of that at the reunion. We end this episode. It's kind so basically we're on the golf carts back from this dinner. They're all kind of wine drunk. And Heather Meredith asks Heather about some of the comments that were from that conversation. And Heather says something where basically like, oh, we basically just said that like you might understand more about like sort of keeping or like seeing past somebody stepping out into marriage because you've gone through that or something along those lines. But it was very like clumsily communicated and Meredith obviously took it and ran with it once she kind of had her own understanding of what happened. What did you make of that? Because that was kind of like, whoa, like I don't even know whether
Out
she's angry about something that even happened or whatever.
And it was out of the blue because what Heather actually said was they've both been accused of it. So they
Right.
stand on it. But like you said, they were all wine drunk. Maybe it didn't. And Meredith really didn't give Heather a chance to kind of like come back down off the wine and explain. So for me, I just want to go back to this whole time. Meredith has been on one a little bit, which is funny because when they were at the lunch after Brittany was crying, they all share their stories about identifying with Brittany. And then Meredith was basically like, when she said, Meredith, I'm really sorry if I accused you. And she's like, except you did. I said that now we flash forward home. And the funny part is, we know that Meredith's not acting like,
No, no,
so
this is
watching
real
her,
emotion from her. Uh-huh.
this is real. And I thought back to, is some of that emotion coming from when her and Jen Shaw got into it, and Jen Shaw made the comment, Meredith's been cheating, and then we hear, and Lisa Barlow says that in her hot mic moment, Meredith's been cheating. So now she feels like they're still having conversations around my marriage, which we don't know for real, because sometimes I do wonder if her and Seth are just now together because of the show. So she has all these emotions building up in this group. Now she's thinking this group is talking about her. And I thought it was interesting when they were at that lunch with Brittany, something that stood out to me about Heather. And she was like, when we've been in the foxhole together episodes ago, and I was laughing. At that lunch, she says, these women made me okay. Everyone around me abandoned me. So she has a separate bond with them, and we're vulnerable with each other. And Lisa agrees. Flash forward at the house, Meredith is going off, and she tells Lisa, you shouldn't be vulnerable with these women. You shouldn't trust any of these women. And it was like, whoa, that was such a difference from lunch. But then I was thinking, Meredith didn't really agree with Heather at that lunch. She was silent, which this season seems to be a little bit of she's connected, but she's kind of distant from the group. So she has this explosion when they were listening at the door, and she said,
oh my God,
you could probably hear me now. And they ran off.
oh,
I was like, this is why I watch.
Exactly.
This is why I watch. I mean, from the beginning, again, I had to look at myself and say to the production company, kudos to you, because you had me agreeing with Whitney, because Whitney was very much, Brittany, you were wrong, but I'm going to console you. Brittany, you were wrong. What did you think when you were drinking margaritas and showing up in red lingerie? So from the producers having me agree with Whitney, to seeing Lisa Barlow's side of it, to like looking at Bronwyn, like
full of surprises.
Bronwyn, I'm side-eyeing you. I was like, my emotions.
Yeah,
I watch it again.
And we can end on this. I think that like Whitney, she kind of had a strong start to the season because it was the whole thing about what she said on the podcast about Lisa. But in the middle, I think it's been a little bit like lagging from her. She's having a pretty good end of the season, low key, because she's pretty good at filtering what's actually like kind of communicating what's actually happening, whether it's like in the moment or in her confessionals. And she's I think that awareness and that sort of ability to read things is a little bit underrated in her. And like the way that she's kind of reading how Bronwyn has been carrying herself in the past couple episodes has actually been pretty spot on. She was on Watch What Happens Live last night, and she was talking about how like, listen, I befriended Bronwyn. Like I like gave her all these chances. I gave her so much leeway, and then she's still kind of throwing me under the bus. And like, yeah, that's what happened. Whitney and Bronwyn Whitney was really welcoming to Bronwyn ultimately at the beginning. So
even against Heather, I'm sorry if you can hear. I'm like my kids leaving out, and I can hear them opening the garage, and I'm like,
all good.
But yeah. So I against Heather, Whitney was like, I know Heather, so I'm going to go ahead and still give Bronwyn a chance, and was defending Bronwyn to Heather. I was so pissed because I don't know if it's necessarily like a two-face, but when they were all sitting at the table bringing up Bronwyn, and Heather goes, two-face. I'm like, I didn't want Heather to be right all the time.
Yeah. And Heather, and I think in you can say that she was in some ways.
Yeah, in some ways, she definitely was.
I don't know. It's just this is layered and layered and layered, and I love it. I love Salt Lake. Taria, is there anything else that's on your mind from around Bravo? I feel like we've covered a lot of ground today, catching up.
We've covered so much. I'm going to reframe. Instead of feeling overwhelmed by all the shows, I'm going to sit in gratitude
that we go
content. And I'm just excited. I was very upset when I found out that next week is the season finale. And I was like, bravo, you bleach, blonde, bad belt, butch body for only giving us 16 episodes of Salt Lake City.
Great reference.
I want more. So
I could watch a full year of this season. Yeah.
And reunions, I don't typically like reunions because I feel like there's a lot of screaming, and there can never be a resolve because they can only show you so much. So we, the viewers, are like, this question didn't get asked or this didn't get flushed out. But I'm actually looking forward to the Salt Lake City.
Me too.
I really am.
Me too. Well, tell everyone where they can listen to your podcast for more chats like this. When you release new episodes, plug all the things before we sign off.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I want to thank you again for having me. Giv is a person of his word. He was like, I'm going to have you on. Sometimes people can say, you've been in this long enough to know they'll say that. And then
Of
it's like,
course.
so I was like, oh my gosh, so thank you for having
Hello.
listeners. Thank you so much for welcoming me here. You can find me. So the podcast is What Else Is Going On podcast, but I go by WeGo, WEIGO. Little backstory, I got that from Cynthia Bailey. Whenever Cynthia was questioned and didn't want to answer, she would say, what else is going on?
It's such a good name. It's
So
such a good name. It really is.
that's where I got that from. So you can find me on Instagram and Twitter and Threads at WeGo, WEIGO podcast. I tried Blue Sky, still don't kind of get it, but if you're over there, I'm on We Go Podcast there. I'm also on YouTube, We Go Podcast. We talk about Bravo. We talk about every single thing that you can imagine going on. So come over there and have a kiki with me. And thank you again. I appreciate you having me.
Always so fun, and I'm sure we'll do it again more in
Oh,
2025. So we always have great conversations. Taria, thank you so much for doing this, and we'll chat again soon.
Thank you.
I want to gab.